first, if we're going to cut migration, we need to lift the birth rate. And the Nationals, we're not battling internal problems, which we'll get to in a moment, are floating some interesting ideas as to how we might encourage couples to have kids. A report out today says the Nationals would consider increasing paid parental leave from 6 to 18 months so mums can spend more time with their bubs. But they're also floating the idea that women who have children could have their HECS debt and their income tax cut by 25% per child. Now, the birth rate is well below replacement level. We've got to do something to encourage procreation. I don't mind this, Caleb.
Nor do I, to be perfectly honest. Look, we were talking a few weeks ago about a proposal from the Parenthood, which is an advocacy group on this matter, and they were suggesting that we should double the government-funded parental leave from 6 months to 12. Of course, this is saying triple it to 18 months, which is an even more extraordinary move. Whether it needs to be 18 months, 12 months is probably adequate, I would have thought. But the reality is that, yes, it will cost the taxpayer to do something like this, but when you're talking about cutting rates of tax, that's not a cost to the taxpayer. It's simply leaving more of the money you've earned in the hands of the taxpayer. So it's not a direct cost to a budget, unless you've already budgeted that you're going to make a certain amount of tax and you don't make that tax. So I don't have a problem with that whatsoever. And nor do I have a problem with cutting their HECS debt either, to be perfectly honest. I see it as an investment in the country more than anything else. The government has made the investment in the woman to go to university, and they've said, well, we'll give you an extra sweetener if you have a child. I mean, you know, it wasn't all that long ago. Peter Costello, the baby bonus, one for mum, one for dad, one for the country. If we don't do something very quickly, if we don't do something soon, you end up in a position, we're already in a position, where if you're going to have any kind of population growth, it means you need people from overseas, immigrants. And those people come here having not contributed to the tax pot from the beginning of their working lives, unlike someone who is born in this country. So there is an argument that even though up front it might cost money to the taxpayer, you could in the end reap the broader benefits of doing so. So I think it is justified to spend the money and cut the taxes and cut the HECS to encourage women to have more children.
Yeah, I've got a bit of a different perspective on this. I don't think we can ever go back to the baby bonus days, the John Howard days. I think there needs to be more family incentives, as you both mentioned. I do not like the idea of lowering HECS debt for women. And the reason why, and I say this as a woman myself, I don't like this idea because, say, for instance, John Smith has been studying to become a doctor for several years now. He's now going to specialise in, I don't know, paediatrics, for example. So therefore, he's got medical bills coming out of his eardrums. But because he doesn't have a uterus, you're telling me that then he can't get any sort of special cut on his own HECS debt. I just think it's completely unreasonable. I absolutely agree with this proposal. Triple paid parental leave. I think something has to be done. I think we have to definitely incentivise families because the statistics show that women are putting off having children or delaying it because of the cost of living crisis. But HECS debt, I don't agree with that.
It doesn't encourage two things. One of them is marriage, so you have the child within a union, which then means that you both benefit from her HECS debt being cut, because it means in the paying back of the HECS debt, which comes out of
what if you're a single parent?
Pay. I know, I understand that it will not apply to a man who is a single parent, but it does encourage you to stay in a marriage and create a marriage in which you have children. Does
but what do you have to? Do you have to be married to have a child? And why, if you're in a loveless marriage, but you're somehow pregnant, I don't think it's got anything to do with marriage.
Well, I don't believe it applies only to women who have a child within wedlock, does it? No,
but what I'm saying is that the benefit, in order for it to exist for a family, you would have to be married, or at least living together and sharing finances. So as a bloke, you can benefit from the fact that a woman's HECS debt is being cut because it will be more income in the hands of the family.
I take your point, but I don't think it applies to every single situation. And I think, why don't we look at other ways to incentivise the family? What about looking at grandparents, for example, to be able to look at children? I mean, Labor in the last couple of years has been introducing all these childcare subsidies to no avail because, again, why don't we give money inside the family unit to say, yes, I want to be a stay-at-home parent. I want to be able to do all these things. Over in Sweden, they have had great success with grandparents looking after children. I think that's something that we could possibly, look at. But I just don't I actually feel it's quite discriminatory to say, no, as a man, we're not going to cut your HECS debt because you can't have a baby.
Can I clarify something? Are you saying that if the baby is born within a marriage, you would be happy with it because the...
No.
So full stop, you don't think women should receive any...
No, I'm just talking about HECS debt.
What about tax cut?
I think that's different, but I just think in terms of a HECS debt, because a HECS debt is different because people have different levels of their HECS debt. Again, and I go back to the same example of a medical student who has literally got bills coming out of his eardrums, but because he doesn't have a uterus, he therefore can't reap the reward.
But what if you've got a man who's earning this much and a woman who's earning the same, but she gets 25% off her tax because she's got a child, 50% off if she's got two children? Is that not discriminatory as well?
No, I don't think it is. I do think paid parental leave is a wonderful idea, and I fully support the Nationals' plan on this. I think that is the way to go. I think that a lot of women feel very stressed about going back into the workforce. Mm-hmm. They don't want to. I mean, they've just given birth. They might be the child's 6 months old. Do you really want to be taking a 6-month-old to childcare? You don't want that. But there are a lot of women out there, and I know a lot of my closest girlfriends are so worried about their own finances. They've just had a baby. They would love to be able to extend their own parental leave. I think that's fantastic. I don't like the idea of men and women being separated for their HECS fees, and I just think that should be completely separate to this whole argument.
Men would claim the HECS discount if we could have children.
That's what I meant. I'm sure you would love that.
So it's
well, hey, who knows? It depends on who you're asking. Well, it depends who you're asking.
We'll get into that later in the program. You know, though, the commitment by the Nationals to make it easier and more desirable for families to have children even extends to a policy they're talking about. How can we make larger family vehicles more affordable? And of course, one of the reasons why you only have two rather than 3 or 4 children is because once it's more than 2, the family sedan is gone and you're in, well, in my day it was like a Nissan Irvan, and that was the end of your life.
Chris Bowen will tell you get a Tesla truck.
There you go.
Carry the whole family in the Tesla.
Good Lord. Once upon a time we made cars in this country that could accommodate families too,